who don't believe in what we say. You see, when we come to that peak, when we come to that stage of life where we respect a fellow human being, irrespective of his background, then we reach the level of what we call morality. Then we reach the level of what we call a civilized society. That is what that is the. In other words, justice is the quality of being fair to everyone. And Plato, he mentions something profoundly about justice, which I thought was outstanding. He says justice are categorized into two groups. Justice is of two types or two groups. He said individuals, and he then called it universal or society. In other words, when we put these two definitions together, individual justice and the justice of society, or the people who are responsible to give this justice to individuals and to society, then we reach the level of morality. Then we reach the level of what peace and tranquility. And both of these definitions in regards to individuals who have justice and society who gives justice to people, both definitions or both meanings are consistent with each other. There's no conflict. This was the difference he had with Aristotle. Because Aristotle said there was a conflict with the definition of what justice meant according to people who were part of society, i.e. individuals, and the society itself. Where Plato differed, and he said no. He said both justice for individuals and justice for society, they're coherent to each other. They go hand in hand. There's no differences in that. And in other words, individuals, why do individuals play a part in regards to justice? And that's because the characteristic of having justice in individuals means one, it means internalizing, it means actualizing justice into your life to do what? In order to place it in all forms of society. You become just people. You see, justice doesn't start with society as a whole. It doesn't. Justice starts as individuals. So when you become moral, when you have morality, when you have fear, and morality isn't just with religion. This is a fallacy to think that morality is just for people of faith. It's a universal thing. It's that which unites everyone. From America to England to Pakistan to Saudi Arabia to Egypt. Everyone around the world is united because we share this passion of what? Justice. And when we implement it into ourselves, into our characteristics, the way we speak, the way we behave, the way we do things, when we change the way we think, when our actions are the manifestation of what we think, because our thinking and our ideas are based upon the belief of justice and peace, then we reach the level of morality. And I quote to you, not word by word, what Dr. Mahathir Mohamad said once. He said that, summarizing that, we find all the killing in the world today. I mean, look how many people died in the First World War, the Second World War. Can we still call ourselves civilized people when war exists today? Is this what we call civilized by killing people because I don't agree with them? Is this what we call civilized by killing people because you want to take their natural resources? Is that what you call civilization? Is that the civilization we want for our kids? Is that what we are preaching to our kids? Is that what we are saying to our kids? Play war games, play games to become what? Doctrinated? This form of doctrination of kids to do what? Is this the form of preaching we are doing to our kids? Is this the form of education we want for our people as society at large? No. So we have to change this aspect. Now, I want to talk about one thing, and I'll wrap up with this. And that is, the media in itself, not all of it, on large, is responsible for a concept which we call Islamophobia, which is a doctrination of society at large, of blaming everything or demonizing Islam and Muslims. And I'm coming from the West, I come from the UK, so I'm giving that prospectus from the UK. Now, I remember what Michael Carmichael said 2 years ago here. A fantastic individual. He said, and he did a presentation, he said that it was the media that was responsible for the demonization of Islam that then gave the legitimacy to certain people to invade certain countries. It wasn't the main reason, but it was one of the reasons that was within that give the jurisdiction for people to say, okay, the war was fine. Why? Because you've got all of these fanatical people. Now, let me explain this further and go beyond this. The Germans, during the Nazis, had what we call a ministry. And that ministry was called the Ministry of Propaganda. And the minister was called Joseph Goebbels, and he was the minister that was responsible to propagate certain messages from the Nazis to the press. And what his idea was, that the press had a right to, or the media had a right to report the news according to the way they wanted to. It was free. It was independent from the state. But in reality, what it was, there was something called a press trust. And the press trust was something which the Nazis created. And the objective of the press trust was what? The press trust was designed so that the Nazis could actually in place or put certain stories that they wanted for their own agenda. And then it was the job of whom? It was the job of the media to spin them stories and to report it, to show to the people that they're actually independent, but in reality, they were coherent to what the Nazis were saying. Now, when the British saw this, the British then established what we call the Tavistock Reeves, which was a centre in London in 1921 after the aftermath of the First World War I. And this was a mass media propagation or propaganda centre. And the objective of this centre was one, mass psychological warfare. It was mass media propagation to propagate people why war is acceptable. Because media has a great has an immense thing to do with this. Now there was a gentleman, and I want to finish off with what he said. There was a man called Walter Lippmann. And Walter Lippmann, he wrote a book called Public Opinion. You can all download this book. And he mentions in his introduction chapter something quite profound and very interesting and scary at the same time. He said, and I'll summarize, I'm not going to go word by word. He says that society at large as individuals, we are pictures in our head. And he says that these pictures are pictures of our families, our friends and our colleagues. And when we start to share those pictures with our friends and our colleagues, and when everyone has the same picture, it then forms public opinion. So Lippmann says what we need to do is control the media. So what we need to do is control what people see, what people read, what people hear, and everything. If we control these instruments in regards to the way people think, the way people speak, we then control the way people think. And this was one of the ways of propagating war to the world, was what? To propagate that the people who were perpetrating, let's say, terrorism or evilness, were people who were against our civil liberties, were people who were against freedom. And what that actually did then was it legitimized the governments to go and attack certain countries. And we saw that. We see it in Iraq. We saw in Iraq, we were told by our foreign minister and Blair that Saddam Hussein, or the late Saddam Hussein, had the capability of launching a nuclear attack on the UK in 45 minutes. Mass media doctrination to the public, to portray to the public that this is the reality that's taking place in our countries. Another example I'll give to you, Pakistan. In Pakistan, we've got what we call the SWAT war now. This so-called American war happening in Pakistan, which has nothing to do with terrorism, really. And, truthfully, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but if you look at what did the Pakistani media do? Immediately, the Pakistani media in their press, in what format? In radio, in television, in newspapers, in every format. Immediately, the Pakistani media said, what? These are terrorists. These are Al-Qaeda. These are Taliban people. These are people who are killing people. And immediately, public opinion changed. It changed public opinion to what? To legitimize and say, you can kill people now. It's good to do that. And we are seeing the effects of that. Just yesterday we saw a bomb in Peshawar. 89 people were killed. So this is the reality we face ourselves, brothers and sisters. And I want to conclude on a few things which I feel is important. How do we galvanize the people to do something? We come from England, we come to Malaysia, to this fantastic concept of criminalization of war, and then we all go back home and we do our own things. You have a responsibility, brothers and sisters. You have a responsibility to support and to work towards the criminalization of war. Now, I'll quote you a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said in the hadith, which means, he said, my ummah, my nation, is one body. My ummah, my nation is one body. If one part of that body feels the pain, the whole body